We are Utah's leading Salesforce consultancy firm. We've had hundreds of successful engagements across Utah and all across the world. All of our employees do live and work here in Utah, though, so we are a centralized location to a lot of our customers, and all of our consultants are certified through Salesforce. That's one unique thing that you'll see at our firm that you don't always get with other firms. We also have a good group of process-minded consultants. So while Salesforce is our foremost focus, we also provide business process consulting and can help you really manage your customer base end-to-end, even portions that don't exist within Salesforce. One of our big goals with every project, with everything that we do really, is to drive user adoption. Obviously, we don't want to build a system that no one wants to use, so we always keep in mind, will this be usable to the end user so you can get the results that you want on the side of management. All right, so without further ado, let's get started with the webinar. Again, it's on file management, content management. People can refer to it different, but pretty much getting documents in Salesforce and having a way to access those and use those. So there are a few different methods that you can use to store documents within Salesforce. The first one is the Files tab. Well, the first one on this list, I should say. The Files tab. That's sometimes referred to as chatter files. It pretty much consolidates all the files that you're posting up to Salesforce, even if they're on other tabs like content or documents. But anything you just share specifically through chatter will be viewed on the Files tab. Probably the most popular and the one I'm going to spend the most time on is Salesforce CRM content. Now this is a feature license, but it's included with Professional, Enterprise, Unlimited. Pretty much Professional and above has access to content, but it's not enabled by default. Like when you get a new version of Salesforce, it's not automatically turned on. You have to go through and enable it. So a lot of customers actually don't even know that they have access to this, and they're already paying for it. So that's where I'm going to spend a lot of the time, because most of you probably already have access to this functionality. And you can kind of read through these notes as well and see what the different limitations are. This is directly from Salesforce's help site, so if you were to look at file management, this would probably be one of the first tips you'd find. The next one on there, Salesforce Knowledge. This is an added license, a paid added, I should say. So if you're just on Professional or Enterprise and you're on Sales Cloud, you probably don't have Knowledge. It's usually packaged in with Service Cloud, and it's more for a customer-facing knowledge base. So I won't be going into that one today, just because most of our customers don't have that enabled. But if you would like more information, you can definitely request that. And also just want you to be aware that that is another method for storing documents within Salesforce. One of the more simpler approaches is just the Documents tab, and I'll show you that in a second as well. But that just allows you to store pretty much like notes and attachments like you do on other objects, but when it's not related to an object. It has the same size limitations, 5 megabytes, so you don't really get very much space on the Documents tab. And Attachments is similar, 5 megabytes, but those are record specific, so under Accounts, Contacts, Opportunities, you almost always have notes and attachments, and this is a standard piece of functionality, so you likely have seen it, where you can attach a file, and that's obviously pertaining to that record specifically. Again, a small limit there, so that's why that's not really a scalable solution if you need larger content management within Salesforce. If you'll notice, the files and Salesforce CRM content both have a 2 gigabyte limit on there. You do have a org-wide limit of data, and I'll speak to that right now. Is actually a good time to go take a look at that. So let's hop over to Salesforce, and I'll show you where you can look at how much data and file space you have. Let's go over to the Setup menu. And depending, I know there's been some upgrades, especially with the new release, depending on how this is laid out. System Overview may be here, it may be down at the bottom on the enhanced interface, or you could always just search up here for System Overview. But pretty much we just want to get to that tab. And this overviews everything, and we can see what our data storage is looking like. So in this case, I'm at 1%. Since this is a demo org, that makes sense. And I have 1 gig of space. The space that you're allotted, it is based on your number of users. Everyone has a minimum value. It's usually a gigabyte. And then it can increase if you have additional users, and it's about half a gig per user or so. Those specific numbers, those can be found on Salesforce help site. If you just search, file storage limits, data storage limits, you see that. If I click on that, that number, which is a hyperlink on the previous page, I can break this out now by data and file, which you do usually have a different number. Since this is a test org, we're seeing the same number, but data storage, that's more metadata, so that comes from the records that you actually have in Salesforce, pretty much the number of records. So this isn't pertaining to today's webinar. This isn't really for the files that we would be uploading that we're going to talk about that would not go into data storage. Those would go into file storage. A lot of times, if you're following along, you're looking at this, you probably have a high data storage. Well, I mean, the number would be low, but it'd be a high percentage, I should say, because usually people do max out their data storage. But your file storage, if you're not, especially if you're not utilizing content within Salesforce, that's probably underutilized and a lower percent over here. If you're not familiar with this, just so you know, you can scroll through and see exactly what objects are contributing to that. First, we have data, that big section up there, and this is the file storage. So I can see, if I'm using content, which is right here, how much of that space is, is being used up by content, and how much from other, these are mainly knowledge article types here that we're seeing. And that just allows you to manage your data more easily. So let's hop back over here. All right, so you can kind of think, depending on your needs within your organization, exactly which option is going to meet your needs. Some are a little more simpler to manage. As I show you, you'll see that the documents have super basic. So that might be step 1. And then maybe you progress to content. Files kind of brings everything together. So if you're utilizing documents or content, you would likely utilize files with it. And I'll go ahead and I'll show you this for a second. So let's start easiest first, documents, which is kind of easy. I'm not even going to go over notes and attachments. I should say that's probably the easiest one because, again, that's standard functionality and it's on every record already. So accounts at the bottom of the page, use of notes and attachments, you can attach a file. The next level up from there would be documents, where it's actually a set tab and function. The document library, like I said, it's pretty basic. You just attach a file, but it's not referenced to an accounts or contact opportunity or anything. Each of those, they can be segmented into folders. So that is one thing that's helpful that you don't have on notes and attachments. And then the folders can be private or public or shared with groups. You do have a little more access to that security management. So let's go over there. I'm just going to go to the Documents tab. If you don't have this tab, you should be able to click the plus sign and find it. You would also be able to customize your tabs to add it there permanently. Or if you don't have access, then your admin might have hidden that field. So, all right, so I'm going to the Documents tab. You'll notice I do have a search, particularly on the documents, and that will search names of the records, and also you can indicate on a record itself if its content is searchable, like I have here, which that will allow it to search the actual attachment as well. So if my search term was not in the name, I would still be able to find that record. So that's handy. I also have all the folders. Like I mentioned, I can have different folders segmented. I do have a personal folder, so similar to views and reports and dashboards, I can have some that only I have access to, and obviously you wouldn't be able to share those with other people if that were the case. Let's take a look at one of these folders, and I'll show you how you have security settings within there, which is similar to a list view. You're familiar with that. I can set the folder as either read-only, so I can add, but other people I grant access to would not be able to. And then I can choose who exactly has access to it. All internal users, if you have a portal, you may see well, even if without a portal, I should say, you'll have all internal users. So if you want to open it up to just everyone, you could do one of two options. Just say this is accessible by all users, or you could do a public group of internal users, and usually you'll do that instead of all users if you had a portal, because all users means portal as well as internal. So you may just want internal and, partner, like in this case, but customer portal would not, whereas if I were to select the first option, my portal would. So just keep that in mind. But that's about all the settings you really need to do on the folder. And then uploading documents is fairly simple. Once you're in the folder, if you click New Document, it'll automatically go there. From the Documents tab, you then would just choose the folder. But I would just do a new document. I'd be able to browse one from my computer. You can also reference a URL instead. I give it a name, which would generate a unique name, which just has the underscores instead of spaces. You can indicate if a document is only internal. So that means that you can't send it externally, and you would not be able to display it like on a portal or something like that. Or if I wanted to do that, I would say it was externally available. Adding the description and keywords, while it's not required, it's definitely helpful for searching and just finding things more quickly and knowing what they are without needing to view them. One thing you'll notice with the Documents tab that's different when we go to Content is if I open this document, if this is the one I want, you'll notice I don't really have a preview at all. There's not an inline preview. If there was a description, maybe that would help, but if I actually want to see the document, I'm going to have to do another click and select View File, which depending on the way you have it set up, it's actually going to download it, so that takes a few seconds, but then I can view it, and right now I'm in Adobe, I'm not even in Salesforce anymore, and I can run through and take a look at that, and then close it, kind of a couple windows. So when we go over to Content, you'll see that that's all in the cloud, and it's a little more streamlined. A couple of other things to note from here. On the Documents tab, you can replace a document, which is helpful if you have like a new pricing sheet every quarter, but one of the things with this is that it won't maintain the prior version. On Content, you will have versioning control. You'd be able to, depending on the settings that you allow, you would technically be able to view version 1, even though version 2 was the current version, and see what the differences were, On this one, we do not have that capability. Again, I would just click Replace Document, and I would find a new file and click Replace. And that would keep, the ID the same and all the other information the same, just update the actual attachment. I can directly from the document email it. So if I had searched and found a document, I could go ahead and click Email, which will just start a basic email, a regular Salesforce email, and this would be included as an attachment. I could also choose to include that inline. And then I just compose my email and go ahead and send that. And it would be attached in activity history to whatever record I related it to or the person I send it to. And that's about the extent of documents, really what you get just using that. The biggest limitations you'll see is the file size, the lack of versioning control, and the quick preview. Those are the big reasons why I prefer to use Content over documents, but again, this is if you're planning, do we even need this? Documents is probably a good place to start. If anyone has questions on documents, go ahead and post them in the GoToWebinar console. I'm keeping an eye on that. So if you have something about a question about documents or something we've seen already, go ahead and add that. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next piece, which is content library. So like I mentioned already, this is kind of the one that I favor. You can see just through this big list, which is again taken from the help site. You could go there and find this as well by searching on content or CRM content. You can see some of the added features that we have with content. Organizing, it's a lot more easier. Searching, similar functionality that we saw in the Documents tab, but you can search on a few other pieces as well as providing featured content that can be searched and tagged. Subscribing, that's one new thing we'll see on content. That allows the user to subscribe to either a library or a certain document. A good use case of this is like pricing sheets. If they change every quarter or every month, a user could subscribe to the pricing sheet, and whenever that is updated, they would get an email or they would get a post in chat or however they choose to receive that and be aware that it has recently been changed. Previewing, again, like I called out, we'll see an actual preview of the document, whether it's a PDF, a PowerPoint, any format, can be previewed directly in the cloud. Contributing is pretty easy. It was already pretty easy in documents, but one of the things you can do with this is you can actually create packs, content packs. You can have a group of documents that you generally send together. So it might be your company overview, a case study, and your price sheet. And they'll usually go together, but they could be separate, so they're not, in one big PowerPoint or PDF. Reviewing usage and providing feedback. So users are able to comment on documents within the content. They're also able to rate them, and you can report on downloads and views. So that's helpful, if you're a content manager, just to see what your salespeople are using, or what anyone is using, what they've rated high, read their comments. If they say there's a typo in this, or we need to change or update this, it's a little more easy because it's all centralized on the actual piece of content. Sharing content is extremely easy. I'll go through an in-depth demo of how you can share those with external resources as well as internal. And it's also available on Salesforce Classic, the mobile app. So you can view and access content, since it's, again, all in the cloud, and send it directly from mobile. So let's go ahead and take a look at this and see what it looks like. So content kind of goes by a few names. So you can have pieces of content, and then those are stored within the library. I usually just like to access the Libraries tab because I can add content and everything there, but you will actually have another tab specifically for content only, like we see here. Like I said, let me just go ahead and open it. I usually don't worry about going here because whenever you add content, you're usually going to add it to one of the libraries, and this is just more of a big list, and I don't like the interface as much, and I prefer to come to the actual library and say, okay, which library do I want to look at right now? And the content would be within there. So just keep that in mind. Also, it's been about 2 years, but content libraries used to be called workspaces. So if you ever hear that term, that also is referring to content library. So I've opened the library right now, and I just went to the Libraries tab, and you notice that I have access to a few different libraries from my user profiles. I can see, there's a sales library, there's also a marketing one. You can have private libraries, so sometimes like marketing will have an internal marketing, and that's where they're staging and making sure everything's reviewed, and then they push it over to a sales library or another segmented library. That's definitely possible. We'll see down here who the members of the libraries are and what their individual permissions are. One of the good things about this is as you add members, you can choose, and this can vary library by library, what access rights they have to this particular library. So in one, I may be a publisher, but in another that's from a different department, I might be a viewer only. If people are not a member of the library, they cannot view that data or send that data or do anything. So in this case, only 3 people would be able to view this information. If I want to add members, it's fairly easy. I can search and I can pick someone and add them. I can do multiple people at the same time as well. And when I do that, that's when I have the access to grant them whatever level of security they should have. So in this case, I'll say this one is a viewer only and save. Just like that, I can also remove or edit people afterwards as well, and I can search for people, whether it's by users, groups, or certain groups within there. Also, just the way it's laid out, you'll see this is a bit more robust than documents. I have tags over here, so I can quickly search by a product tag. So in this case, if I wanted to search MR 8500, that's a special product we have, I can see quickly any content that has that filter, or that tag, I should say. And I can come back over my content, and I can do that with these. I could sort by popularity or alphabetically. So right now it's alphabetically, but if I wanted to see which is the most popular, I could do that as well. I can also see recent activity pretty quickly. I can go through and see what's been updated or who's adding new content. I also have the access to feature content. So as a publisher, when you uploaded a document, you would indicate that it was featured and it would appear up at the top. So let me show you one other thing before we actually get into a piece of content. Here we go. So in the search of content, it's actually fairly robust too, more so than we saw in documents. In documents, we just have the keyword search. On content, I can decide I can filter down by what the document type is. I can also go by review date, other custom fields that I have that I want to indicate are searchable, even the file format. In this case, I only found 4 PowerPoints, but I would see Word and PDF, images, and things like that, or even by author. As I select those, I can make my list a bit smaller. There you go. And then I could clear filters. So if you had a pretty big list, we could see how that would be helpful. And I can see that my filters are being applied. I could either clear filters to clear everything, or if I just wanted to clear one, I could just remove that and go back to the list I was on before. So definitely helpful. Go back to the content page, and let me just open one of these, and we'll show you kind of what it looks like in line. So here we have an actual piece of content, and here is the preview that I was talking about. So you can actually see the whole document, whether it's a PDF with multiple pages. In this case, this is a PowerPoint, and I can go through all the pages and view that. I could make it bigger. This is just an example, so you can see that's pretty easy because it's all big text. But in real life, I'm sure you would have some PDFs with smaller text, so you could maximize that and still be able to go through it. You can also just see what libraries this is in. Here's where you have the option to feature, what version we're on, and all that information. As an end user, here's where I'd be able to promote or demote content. So if I thought this was a good slide, I can go ahead and promote it, and this is where you get some of the reporting capabilities to see what your users like and don't like. Some of the other options we have over here, right now I am in preview, and that's where you would default, but here's where we have some of the more robust things that we saw on we didn't see on documents, I should say, that we do have in content. Comments, for example, we can add comments in here and say, it would be good to add something, and we can save that to record, and then other people could comment within there, and I would want, as a publisher, I'd want to review this and see what have people been saying about this piece of content. Here's where I also have version. So in this case, we're still in version 1, but I would be able to upload a new version. And when I did, that would be the default. So when people went to preview or they just opened this for the first time, they would always see the newest version. But if they ever needed to go back and review what the difference was or what's changed, they'd be able to go to the Versions tab, and you notice that I have the capability to download or preview a previous version. So even though I have the newest version, I can refer to the oldest or older versions. I'm also able to see number of downloads over here, so I could quickly see who's downloaded or how many downloads there have been. I can also see who has subscribed to the content. Let me go ahead and subscribe, and I have to go back to that. And then I'd be able to see a list of everyone that has subscribed. And one of the last things we have on here is content packs. And this is the part that is invaluable for a sales rep. What a content pack allows you to do, I kind of already explained it, but it brings together multiple documents into one content delivery for the customer. A good thing about it, too, is the salesperson will have a lot of flexibility over exactly how that can be delivered, whether it's inline only or they can access it with a password. They can download it only as a PDF versus the original format, a lot of stuff. So that's what I'm going to show you now. I did have a question that came about the size limit of the file that's uploaded here. It's 2 gigabytes. So it's much larger than what you have on the documents, which is 5 megabytes. So plenty of space, and all file types are supported. So let me go ahead and show you how we could build a content pack. Let me go back to the library. Let me actually go into the sales one. Okay, so from here, I'm going to want to create a new content pack. And it will be able to pull from multiple libraries, just from a library where it will be stored. You want to create a content pack. I'm going to go ahead and do this. A good thing about this too is, especially if you have users, like you have PC users and Mac users, and some of them don't have PowerPoint, you actually don't need the software of the original file in order to be able to edit this and bring this together. So I could have PowerPoints in here, and I could even be on a mobile device, and I could pull that together and attach it with a PDF and a Word document. It's one of the great things too. So let's see, what did we want to search on here? All right, so I have all these documents. You know, some are PDFs and some are PowerPoints, and here's a Word. I can pull those together. So where's this one? I'll just drop it in there. And I have the PowerPoint, but I also want to include a case study for the specific industry of the customer or whatever. I can pull that down and make a new piece of content to deliver. So now I would have 3 pieces. If that's all I want, I'm going to go ahead and save, and it's going to compile those for me. So here I have a new content pack. So maybe this is a presentation for United Partners. And I want to either save this in my personal library, or I could publish it for other people to access. But since this is just my personal customer and I'm only the one going to be sending it, I'm going to just leave it there and save. So now it's been saved. I could go ahead and work on another one or be done, or I can go ahead and view that content. I'm going to go there so I can deliver it. So now we see there are several documents within here, and I can scroll through and see what everything that has been included. So there's a Word doc, and there's all this other information. I still have versions, but you'll notice in my personal library I don't really have comments and other things since I'm the only one that would own those. And now, if I'm ready to deliver the content, I can go ahead and click this, which is what I'll show you in 1 second. You also have the capability to download it or to give it to other people through publishing it in a library that you have access to publish on. I could also edit it, and I can clone and customize. So if this were a little harder than 3 documents, I may want to clone and customize it the next time and just do a different case study every time. A few options that you have within there. Right now I'm going to go ahead and click Deliver the Content, and it brings up this wizard. And here's where a salesperson would have, like I said, a lot of flexibility on exactly how they want to deliver this. So here's the name, which I typed before, and then it inserts today's date. I could change that if I wanted to, if that wasn't, you know, no, that's not professional. I could change that, and that's okay. And then I have these other options. So I can say they can only view it in a browser, or they could download it in the original format. Say, no, that's not cool. Or they can't download it at all. Either way, I can let it notify me of the first view or download. Since this is delivered via URL, you'll have all of that tracking back. I can also set an expiration. One thing that's great with this is if you have like a pricing sheet that expires, or especially if it's, you know, time-sensitive information, you can actually set that to be removed. They have removed access after a certain point. And like I said, you could even set a password. So let me go ahead and associate this with an account. So we'll be able, United Partners, we'll be able to see that when we go to the account page. All right, and do next. All right, so what it does is it generates a URL for you to provide to the customer to go in and view that content. So I can preview that as well as a salesperson before I even send it. So I can go through and see what they'd have. They'd have the option to download it as a PDF. They could just go ahead and view it. I'll just click View there. And they'll be able to go through, you know, the slide deck, and they could close that, and then they could go on to the Word doc. I don't know, I want to do that. Oh, right here. And then they could go on to the Word doc or the PDF, and they could view all of that information. And then, of course, they could download the entire pack as a PDF, is what I said there. But again, you could give them original format access. Let's close that. If that looks good to me, I can go ahead and I can deliver the content. I could either send them a message with this information, or I could just copy the link and use my own email template, whatever I want to do, and send that over to them. And then I would click Done. It's a really powerful way to share information back and forth with customers and have a lot of visibility and analytics into how that information is used. Since content can be associated with opportunities, especially, you can run some pretty robust reports on opportunities with content and how they, how they do. So every time that this case study is included, we notice a 5% higher win rate, or whatever it is you want to see. You just would have more visibility into that. And again, that is on opportunities, contacts, and accounts. You'd be able, really anything that you, anything that you related the content to, you would be able to see that. So if I look an opportunity, we would have a related list if it had been added for content library. If it's not, and you're an administrator, and you would add that there. Yeah, and that way, I'm not sure if this one has, but you can see there's created by, created dates, and you can actually deliver the content, which takes you to the same page that we had before, directly from a record, and obviously it would associate that piece of content delivery to the record for you on the next page when we manually selected the account. The only thing to consider with that is you'd want the content pack to be built before you access it, because there's not a place right here to build the content pack. So whichever way you want to go about it, you have multiple ways to approach it. So that's content libraries in a nutshell. I know it's kind of a lot of information. There's a lot there. So if you do want more information, you want to go ahead and try that out. Feel free to. You can, like I said, look up on the help site and get a lot of information about it as well, or definitely reach out to your consultant over here, and we can help you get that set up too. Like I mentioned at the first of this call, and just to make sure everyone's on the same page, content is included with your Sales Cloud purchases. So, and one way you can verify that too is by going to your company profile and company information, where you see your Salesforce users and everything. So here I have my Salesforce users. I have 35, and 28 are used. And then down here I have my feature licenses. So here is where Salesforce CRM content is. So you can see I have 35 and I've used 31. Again, by default, since this isn't turned on, you may see, total licenses will be the same number of Salesforce licenses we have, just because that's included, but used might be 0. So if that's the case and it may not be enabled, there is a section to customize and manage CRM content. So at first, before you enabled it, there would probably just be settings, and you go here and you'd want to click edit or edit and enable content in the first place, and you can choose a few other things as well. And then afterwards, you'd be able, obviously, to assign that to users. As a feature license, just in case anyone does not know how to assign those to individual users, since it can be segmented, even though, which is a little odd, because you'll have the same number of content licenses in this example as you will for your full users. So I don't know why people really wouldn't give everyone access to it, since you still have the security control on the libraries. But if there were some reason that you didn't want to give all your users the feature license, it is controlled individually. So I can go to a user and give them access. I mean, I would already have it, but let me show you. I'd give them access rights by checking these CRM content user boxes. So this one is the main one that enables access, and then you can also determine if they get email alerts. So like when they subscribe, as I was mentioning before, like if they subscribe to a document, they would get an email alert when a new version was listed. And they can also get content alerts as a daily digest, similar to Chatter. They can see what's changed on the records that they subscribe to or the libraries that they are a member of. So if you want to check it out, you would enable content in the settings, and then you would make sure that you or whoever else you were giving access to had these boxes checked on their user record. All right, I haven't seen any questions about content. So let's go on and see what else we have. All right, so kind of the last thing I want to focus time on today is chatter files. Like I mentioned before, chatter files kind of consolidates what you've done on other pages. So you'll usually use it hand in hand. Like I would say use libraries and files would be like my main recommendation. So here as I come over to files, you can see I see what I've just done on content over here. So here's that content pack that I built. I can see it's a pack because it's in a little box, has their icons and stuff. Here's another pack. I can see the individual files that I've recently accessed, and I'd be able to go through those. I can also upload files here. If I do it from the Files tab, though, they're not associated with a content library, so that's the thing to consider. Files can be, it can reference things from a content library, but they can just be, you know, I sent a chat to someone with our company logo, and now that appears in Files, but that wasn't a piece of content. So, and that's what we'll be able to see here. So you can see files in my library, so this is coming from content. And then I can also see, you know, files I own, files shared with me, and regular files I follow. This would come from just chatter files. So they're not necessarily in content. They're not, they may not be deliverable to customers in the same way that I've just shown you with content. They're just chatter files. And you add those, you know, on the chatter tab or on the groups tab, wherever it is. So if I, you know, go to this group and I post a file, I can post a file whether it's from Salesforce or uploaded from my computer. Here again, 2 gigabytes, so a lot of space. So I can go ahead and browse, and I can come down here and say, okay, let's send this file just to this group for whatever reason. Maybe they're doing review, but it's not ready for content. When I do that and share, it'll go ahead and upload, and now this will appear in my files, even though it may not necessarily be content, if that makes sense. So there are some use cases to only use files and not use content, and that's more if you just want company collaboration around documents and you're not concerned as much about, you know, external client-facing documents that are delivered directly from the cloud. All right. If there are any questions, again, feel free to post it in the GoToWebinar question pane. And there's a couple of things to note over here. And this text that you're seeing, like all this just comes from the Salesforce help site. So if you want to review this afterwards, again, there will be a recording of the session, but you could just go on the help site too and search, you know, chatter files, and that's where you would see this information. So let me know if you need any more information regarding that. Okay. So one of the last things I just want to touch on is Salesforce files, which you may have heard about, especially if you read the release notes. Salesforce files is new. It's still in pilot, so you won't have access to it unless you specifically ask for it from Salesforce. But what Salesforce files is going to do is it's pretty much going to replace chatter files and add integration with third-party systems. So it's going to be awesome. So you'd still use content or documents, you know, whatever, and then you'd be able to go to the Files tab like we just saw, which consolidated all of that, and it will also consolidate what you have in SharePoint or, you know, any other system that you want to tie in, Dropbox, things like that. And the good thing, too, is those integrations allow for those pieces of content to actually be stored on those external servers. So at the beginning, you know, we mentioned your file and your data storage space. Depending on how much you have, you know, if you were uploading every piece of content, you may max out your file storage space pretty quickly. So what Salesforce Files will allow you to do is actually utilize SharePoint or Dropbox or somewhere where the file storage is maybe cheaper or you have more of it, and just integrate that information back to Salesforce as a view-only file. So I'm excited about it. It should be really good to get some of these companies who do have, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 content management systems kind of centralized. So again, it's in pilot, so I just wanted you guys to be aware that what you saw today, especially with files, that may be changing a little, but it's an added enhancement. Not, you know, it's not really completely getting rid of that functionality. So, all right, I haven't seen any questions come up. So if you do have one, go ahead and post it. That was the end of the content that I had for the presentation today. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes maybe get some questions on there, and we can go through those. Otherwise, have a great Friday, a great weekend, and thank you for joining today. If you have any questions that come to mind later, or you want any other information on what you saw today, you can reach out to us, and our contact information is here on the screen.